So, with a new patch coming up, I wanted to take a little bit of time to explain what that means for fishing. Because, well, I guess really, whenever there's a new major patch, at least historically so far, uh, it's a very magical time for the fishing community because we get the big fish. We start getting a new big fish, and the process for catching them and finding them, actually finding them, is probably one of the most unique aspects of, well, the forking community in general and just the fishing community in general. So I'm going to kind of walk through what the discovery period looks like and how that's going to work, how you can help out if you're interested, and kind of what to expect here throughout the expansion with fish. So, new patch, new fish. Whenever we get a major patch, so like X.1, X.2, X.3, we will typically be getting new big fish, and it varies anywhere between like 6, 8, 9, something like that. It's not like by region, they're all spread out across all these different zones, and it hasn't always been on X.1. That actually started in Shadowbringers, where we started getting big fish in patch 5.1. Before that, it was like Stormblood was like 4.3. Heaven's Word, I think, was like 3.3, and I think A Realm Reborn was like 2.2, 2.4 or something, or no, not 2.4. Was like 2.2 or something like that. So it wasn't until Shadowbringers when we started getting new big fish every, like the start of every major content patch. So we're expecting them in this upcoming patch. It's because they haven't done it, even though they've done it for 2 whole expansions now, because they did it for 3 expansions where it wasn't in X.1, we can't assume that there will be, but we are expecting them regardless. So really, with these patches, it's nothing huge. It's not like hundreds of fish. It's like I was saying earlier, 6, 7, 8. And we don't know anything about them at all. We don't know what the fish are. We don't know their bait. We don't know their conditions. For those of you who are listening to this and maybe don't fully know how fishing works in 14, every fish in the game has a set of conditions that allow it to be caught. Basically, this is like what we call windows. So like when a fish is available to be caught. And this would be, every fish has one that is basically a time window. So like what time of the Eorzean day, the current weather, the previous weather, and typically you also need to include the bait for big fish, because outside of A Realm Reborn and a little bit of Heaven's Ward, big fish will only bite on one specific type of bait. And that's basically everything that determines whether or not you can catch a fish. When new fish get added, it's not like raids where they say, all right, well, if you want to go unlock this raid, go here, go talk to this NPC. And it's not like crafting recipes where you can just look them up. With fishing, we'll see a gap in the fishing log. We'll see a new fish has been added, and we don't know anything about it at all. Through means, we can find out the name of it, and we can usually then use that name to assign it to a fishing hole. But we don't know whether or not it has a time restriction. We don't know if it has a weather restriction. We don't know if it needs a previous weather. We don't know what type of bait it uses, so we can narrow that down. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. We just don't know anything about these fish. And this is where the fun really gets started with fishing, and this is something that the fishing community loves, because whenever this new patch drops and new fish are added, we go into a period that we call the discovery period. Or just discovery for short. And This is a period of when the community comes together. Hundreds of fishers will come together and just forego doing the MSQ or any other piece of content that's being released, and people will just hyper focus on finding these fish. And the way that we do this is very simple. It's basically what you're probably expecting it to be, and that is we literally just fish a lot. There is some coordination, like at the microscopic level, of like making sure people are using a wide variety of baits. But for the most part, it really is, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go to this spot and this is the current weather, this is the previous weather, this is the time frame, and I'm just going to use this bait for the entire thing, and I'll tell you if I get a bite. And if I don't, I report that, and we keep track of that. And if I do get a bite, cool, we found the fish. But that doesn't mean we're done. So basically, this is how the fish cord has kind of adopted the discovery. We have a master spreadsheet that is curated by Toyota Teyun that will have all the fish and any of the knowledge that we already know about it. Like, did we get a bite? Which fishing hole it is, like what's the name of it. And what people will do then is they will basically just pick a bait, pick a fishing hole, and fish for an entire weather window, which is 8 Eorzean hours. Because the weather, if you didn't know, in Eorzea changes at midnight, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. or basically 0816 on the 24-hour scale. And so you'll basically just fish through that entire window. And if you get a bite, cool, you report it. If you don't get a bite, you definitely report it into this one channel that we have on the fish cord that we have a template, and you just fill out the template, submit it, done. It gets marked off. Toyota will go in and mark off your recording. And then we have this spreadsheet that says how many people have reported bites or no bites or something. And we can look at it, and we can keep an eye on this, and we can now be a little more direct as like, okay, so we need to go to, Yachtel during rain after clouds between the 16 to midnight window. And we can be more direct with that, because it's like, that one has nothing. That one we should go test, because no one's reported anything. It could be hiding there. And this means that some fish could have a possibility, knowing what we know with like time windows, because we know that fish typically now go down to at least a 30-minute increment, or they can. We have thousands upon thousands of possibilities of finding where this fish is. Like, literally put every combination of weather and bait and time onto a board, which I don't even know if you can do, because that might be a 3-dimensional space, but we have something similar to that where we can do it with 2 dimensions. Put that onto a board, and effectively we're just throwing darts. There is, though, some educational guesses that are being made. And this is partially just due to historic big fish window, like big fishes, because what we do see, and we've seen this since Heavensward, is big fish have a quote-unquote, and I use this term very loosely, difficulty curve. Like, there is a sense of progression from the initial big fish to the final, like, legendary fish added in the final patch. So these X.1 fish, the fish that are going to be coming up, the very first fish that are added, are typically some of the most common fish you will find. Like, these are the ones that have like 23-minute windows, or they're daily with no weather, like loose pendant that's caught in the crostarium and at the pendants. That one's up daily. That one's up, once a day in Eorzea a day at least. So roughly every, 60, 70 minutes or so, 50, 60, 70 minutes. Pretty common. And it's not a rare bite either. You can go like a whole loose pendant window without getting a bite, but in reality, you're going to get at least 1 or 2 bites. So these early fish are very common. I'm really expecting the discovery period of this to not take very long. The expectation is that this is going to be very quick. This will probably, if I had to guess, no more than 12 hours. If it goes past a day, I would be a little surprised. But there's a chance for that to happen. Because there are just some fish that have been in that first patch where big fish are added, the ones that are typically the easiest, or at least in those early patches, there are some that are not super easy to get. They're not super common. And so like we have had some of those in the past where like patch 5.1 saw Priest of Yaxlaqua in like Tusimeka and the Raktika Great Woods. That one's considered a relatively challenging fish. Even though, mainly because it's just very slippery. It's up daily for the most part, and before Dawntrail, you really only got 1, maybe 2 attempts at it per window. So it was a relatively, quote-unquote, difficult fish to catch. And that was added in patch 5.1. Amblin Caltrop was added in patch 5.2. That was also a fish that is considered relatively rare, distinctly rare, considering that it's one of these early patches. The 5.2, little less common, but still pretty common. Usually these are fish that you can knock out within a week of just casually fishing. That's kind of like the scale of difficulty for these 5.1 or the X.1, X.2 fish. Amblin Caltrop is not necessarily one of those fish. Priest of Yaxlaqua, not necessarily one of those fish. Going even back to Heavensward, patch 3.3, which was the first time we saw these big fish, actually introduced aphotic piraruku, which is not a very common fish either. And it also introduced one of the rarest biting fish in the game, which many people would believe would be, say, like Aelitskon, Cinder Surprise, or what's that other one? Ruby Dragon. No, it's called the second one. And it's not even a legendary fish. It's just this common of like run-of-the-mill big fish caught in the blue window next to the Okazundu waypoint in the Sea of Clouds. It's the second one. It's just a large tornado shark, and that's like one of the rarest fish in the game. And for those curious, the other rare fish is Floating Boulder, which is caught in Gridania, north of Falgord Float. Camp Tranquil. And the actual most rarest fish in the game, big or not, is actually the Magic Bucket, caught in Corythia's Western Highlands, in the South Bane Pool. If you are struggling with that fish, make sure you have snagging turned on. If you don't have snagging turned on, you're not going to catch it. But if you have snagging turned on, then you're just unlucky. And then some other ones, even Stormblood had its own in 4.3, which is still one of the early patches for fish, if not the earliest. You have Rakshasa, which is caught in the Isle of Zeki, and it is mooch off of Ruby Shrimp. Not the most common. So there is precedent for the fish that are going to be coming out early on in the Dawntrail expansion to be, maybe 1 or 2 of them to be what I might call interesting. But historically, the expectation is that it won't be. It's very similar to like the first patch of raids, basically. Like we got the Arcadian, the very first like M1, Arcadian Raid 1 Savage, not really that challenging in the grand scheme of things. Same thing we had with Pandemonium, same thing with Eden, where really it's more of like a slightly more difficult extreme. So not really like super challenging. Same thing with fishing. So that's one of the things to expect with these fish, and just kind of moving throughout the expansion, is the progression of rarity and quote unquote difficulty of fish does, or at least should, gradually increase as we go through. Endwalker didn't really see that too much. Shadowbringers definitely did. Definitely had that nice little progression as it went through. Endwalker, not so much. I'm hopeful for Dawntrail. I think that will be, I think Dawntrail is currently set up to be a very interesting expansion for big fishing. And we'll get our first taste of that with the upcoming patch. So, something a lot of people ask when we say, hey, where are these new big fish on like day one? And we're just like, well, we don't know. Why don't you come and help find them? They go, okay, how? And I touched on it a little bit, but basically, if you want to help come discover fish with us and discover fish with the rest of the, at least, Fishcord community, basically what you can do is grab any of the Dawntrail bait, join the Fishcord, look at the spreadsheet that will be posted. There will be a spreadsheet where we keep track of all the data. Check that out. Just pick a fish in a zone that you like or a region that you like, and then just go fish. And that's basically it. The way that the Fishcord will do it is we don't really dictate like, Fruity, you go here, and Z, you go here, and Chaos, you go here. It's really just kind of, you go do what you want. There will be callouts for rare or under-tested weather. So if we have like a rare weather combination, like rain into rain, there may be a ping. Then there's a role called the tester role that you can join and opt into if you want. You can, you'll get pings on that, and then, a lot of people would be asked to go do that because sometimes these big fish do hide in those rarer weather transitions. Like the unconditional in the Asm step hides in one of those. I'll admit, I was kind of hoping that there would be one in Garlemald and Endwalker, because it was extremely rare. Not extremely rare, but it was rare enough. At one point it had like a 100-day downtime, and I was like, there's no way in heck we were going to get a fish in that, but I was kind of hoping we did. But that's not the point. Basically, you just join the Fishcord and say, hey, I want to help. Somebody will help direct you to the channel, which is usually discovery and testing. And then you will just go fish, put on a podcast, put on a Netflix, put on a video, chat with friends, and just start fishing. And when you do a whole window or even a partial window, but ideally you do the whole window, the whole weather 23-minute weather window, you then go into a channel that we have for spreadsheet updates, and you just submit what you did. I fished from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Tulilolol. It was raining. The previous weather was clouds, and I used whatever bait. It's completely eluding me right now. Ghost snippers. I use that. Submit. Send it. Go do another one. And that's basically how you can help out. And what will happen is people will post, if you keep an eye on that spreadsheet channel, people will post if they have caught the fish or if they have gotten a bite. Typically, well, I don't want to say typically, but with Dawntrail, none of the fish are ferocious bites, which are 3 exclamation points. And typically since after patch 4.0. So 4.3 technically when big fish were added. 4.3 onwards, no big fish has had a bite that wasn't a ferocious bite. Now we are kind of hoping, I'm kind of hoping that they bring that back, because I think it adds a little bit more interest. But it is one of those very like side niche things that they might not do, and then it really confuses people, because there's only the salter, which is a weak bite, and there is little paracos, which is a strong bite. Those are the only two fish that don't have ferocious bites. But point being, keep an eye on the spreadsheet channel. Just keep an eye on the fish cord. You can keep an eye on my social media as well. I will try and keep people up to date on the discovery as well. Just keep an eye on it, and you'll see these bites come in, and these fish will come in and be like, oh, okay, we caught it, and it was a bite. I cast it at 12:02 in the afternoon. It was cloudy with previous skies of clear, using ghost snippers again. Cool. We now know the bait, because we know that, and you can use that bait and just during that time frame, during that weather, or either or, you then can go and focus on that. And then the next step, once we discover what the bait is and we have a bite, we have a rough idea of what it is, we now have to determine what the end and, what's the start and end time? What's the weather? If it's clear skies, does it have a prerequisite? Does it matter? Does it not matter? These are all things that we have to figure out. So it's going to take multiple catches from people. I mean, it is lots of catches, lots of data, before we actually know what all these big fish are actually catchable with. So that's a bit of a shorter one, but that's really kind of, in a nutshell, what to expect going into this upcoming patch with big fish. So if you are somebody who's like, I don't really do Discord, or I'm in enough, I don't want to, or the fish cord is a little bit too big and intimidating, and you just want to share your catches on, like, say, Twitter. I know that myself and a few other people do keep an eye on the Final Fantasy XIV Twitter. I'll be keeping an eye on the Blue Sky to just see if anyone catches it. And if you catch it, post it. Post a full game screenshot, full thing, please, of whatever bait you were using, what the time was, what the weather was. Post that as text in the tweet, in the post, whatever platform you're using, and share it. Use the hashtag Final Fantasy XIV. That would be great, or FFXIV. And so that's just another way that you can participate in this. Fishing is not really meant to be something you do. It's meant to be shared. You're meant to share what you learn with others. So please feel encouraged to do that. If not, or if you don't feel like using social media and you do want to use the Discord, we will have a template up for submitting all those information as well. So that's about it. Bit of a shorter ramble on this one today, but I really wanted to put one out just briefly to give everybody a rough idea of what to expect coming up with the upcoming patch, what to expect with big fish, and basically, if you wanted to participate, here's how. It's a ton of fun. Like, truly, the discovery period for fishing is probably one of the most exciting parts of any patch for me. And the earlier it is in the expansion, the quicker it will go. So even if you're not able to fish, just keep an eye on the Discord. Just watch it, and you'll be able to kind of see all that excitement come through, and you'll be like, oh, cool, we already got that fish in Tlilolol. So definitely do that. And even if you aren't there for the first catch, there's still plenty of things that we're going to need to do. Like I said, we're going to have to get a lot of catches before we have a rough idea of what the start and end time of these fish are going to be. And so it will take a few days to really officially do that. So if you're hoping that I'm going to have guides out for these big fish day one. Don't expect it. Expect it within maybe the first week if things are going as we expect. If they don't, maybe longer, maybe shorter. It depends on the fish. So that's about it. Thank you for listening again. And I hope everyone enjoys this upcoming patch. And until next time, good luck and happy fishing.